Hi, I'm David Taub, and welcome to the Parshah Rabbit Hole, where I find something weird in the weekly Torah portion and follow it all the way down until it gets even weirder. This week's rabbit hole starts with Tefillin and eventually gets to comic books.
Well, you know what I think? I think Casper's the ghost of Richie Rich.
Hey, they do look alike.
But, as always, we have to get there. This week's episode is dedicated to me, in honor of my birthday. This dedication comes from an anonymous viewer who may or may not be my parents. So, besides for my birthday coming up on Shabbos, I'd like to acknowledge another important rabbit hole milestone. While I was editing last week's video, I realized that there were over 100 images in my Rabbi Profiles folder, meaning we've looked at ideas from over 100 different sources since I started in October, which means if you've been watching this every week, you can honestly say that you've learned from over 100 different Torah books so far this year. So, congratulations to you on that. Okay, so this week's rabbit hole is going to be a little bit of a short one. My family and I are going out of town, so even though I tried to get a full episode done before we left, I just wasn't able to do it. But when I was preparing that rabbit hole that I didn't do about Mazel, which I think maybe I'll probably do for next week, I stumbled into another little mini rabbit hole about Tefillin. This week's Torah portion, Parshas Eikev, includes the second paragraph of Shema, which mentions the mitzvah of Tefillin. So initially I didn't see Tefillin as having any weirdness that I could follow, and it wasn't even on my radar for topics to explore. But while I was preparing that other rabbit hole, I was looking at a source about carrying amulets on Shabbos, and I wanted to make sure that I was going to explain what an amulet was properly. My understanding was that it's some sort of charm with protective powers, often containing inscriptions of magical phrases. Which is right, I think, but I looked it up just to be sure, and when I looked up the definition for amulet, I saw that a synonym for amulet was phylactery, which was interesting to me because phylactery is the English word for tefillin. And I've always thought that it was a funny word, particularly when people try to use it to translate tefillin into English so that people can understand it, which is silly to me because phylacteries is just as foreign and confusing as tefillin. But I do like to imagine the person who actually is helped by that. Like, oh, phylacteries. Okay, yeah, that I get. Tefillin, I had no idea what that meant, but phylacteries, I get that. Anyways, despite my long-standing fascination with the word, I never actually looked it up to see what it means, and apparently it comes from a Greek word meaning amulet. And this meaning of the word phylactery as amulet actually has modern-day applications. Apparently phylacteries are a thing in Dungeons and Dragons, and there's some sort of amulet.
Shouldn't there be a board or some pieces or something to Jenga?
So this is interesting to me because I certainly don't think of tefillin as an amulet, but I can see the overlap. It's an object with spiritual properties and powers that has words written on parchment sealed up inside of it. So maybe that might be an interesting rabbit hole in the future, exploring the similarities and differences between tefillin and amulets and why tefillin are referred to that way in non-Jewish contexts. But that's not what I was most excited about. What got me really interested was when I was looking at the bottom of the Wiktionary entry on the word phylactery, and I was looking at the See Also section, and one of the links was speech bubble, as in, like, comics, which was weird. What do tefillin have to do with speech bubbles? So I scrolled back up and saw that one of the definitions given for phylactery was speech scroll, which apparently is an art history term for the precursor to the modern cartoon speech bubble. In old paintings, if they wanted to make someone talk, they would have them holding a scroll of words, and sometimes that scroll would be coming out of their mouth, like in this example. And when I saw this example, I thought that was really interesting because it's this long, narrow strip of parchment with words on it, and it kind of visually reminded me a lot of how the parchment inside of tefillin looks. So first of all, I was excited to learn about speech scrolls at all. I had no idea that it existed, and that's just a fun idea. Also, obviously, as an artist who often draws cartoons with speech bubbles, this speech bubble tefillin connection was very cool to me. But the reason I was really excited to learn about this was because it added a new dimension to how I think about the mitzvah of tefillin. The meaning of tefillin that I usually think about is that this mitzvah helps us bind our hearts and our minds to God. And as someone who doesn't like rules and discipline very much, that makes tefillin represent something that doesn't come naturally to me and something that I have to work on. But now I can also think about tefillin as a speech bubble that somehow lets my soul express itself in a way that it wouldn't be able to without tefillin.
Until this moment, I never knew why God put me on this earth, but now I know. To buy that comic book.
Your emotion is out of place here, son.
All right, that's it. That's the rabbit hole. Thank you for following me down the rabbit hole. If you have trouble finding your way out, you can call for help using a speech scroll and then maybe use that speech scroll as a rope to climb out.